نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله اصطفى آدم ونوحا وآل إبراهيم وآل عمران على العالمين صدق الله العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Rasulallah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. The ayah that I recited translates as, Verily Allah chose Adam and Nuh and the family of Ibrahim and the family of Imran over all the world. This is Surah Al-Imran verse 33. Now at some point in our lives we all must have been taught or learned something from the life of Prophet Isa alayhi salam and his mother Sayyidah Maryam. In the Quran, Allah has spoken about Sayyidina Isa in great detail and in many places. Allah chose Sayyidina Adam and Nuh. And why Sayyidina Adam? This is because he is known as Abul Bashar, meaning he is the father of all mankind. He is the first human that Allah created, and after Sayyidina Adam, Allah created Sayyidina Nuh, and he is known as Shaykh al-Anbiya, meaning he is one of the greatest Nabis to have ever lived on this earth. He was around 1050 years old and he gave da'wah for 950 years. And in that time, 19 people accepted Islam. And even though it was only 19 people, he still continued to invite people to Islam. And why? This is because this was his duty to give da'wah and to educate the people. Where the ayah says, وَآلَ Ibrahim, and Allah chose the family of Ibrahim. He is known as the father of all the prophets, meaning Abul Anbiya. Prophet Ibrahim had a son called Ishaq, who had a son called Yaqub. Hazrat Yaqub is known as Israel, meaning, so in the Quran, Allah mentions, where he talks about the Jews in the Quran, they are referred to as Banu Israel, meaning the children of Israel. So Sayyidina Yaqub had a son called Yusuf, and all these prophets were sent by Allah from Ibrahim alayhi salam. And this is what ayah is referring to then, where it says wa ala Ibrahim, meaning Sayyidina Ibrahim and his sons. And the next part, wa ala Imran. Imran is the father of Sayyidah Maryam, who is the grandfather of Sayyidina Isa. And of course, Sayyidina Isa was born without a father, meaning his birth was then a miracle. He was the prophet who was sent before Rasulullah, and he will be the only prophet on the Day of Judgment to be called by his mother's name. And because he didn't have a father, he only has a maternal lineage. So Sayyidina Imran's wife Hannah, she made a dua and said, Inni nadartu laka ma fi batni muharraran fataqabbal minni, which means, O my Lord, what is in my womb I pledge to free in your name, so accept this from me. So she made this oath that the child to be born, she will give this child up for the service of Bayt al-Maqdis. So she was hopeful that she would give birth to a boy. فَلَمَّا وَدَعَتْهَا, when she gave birth to a female, قَالَتْ رَبِّي إِنِّي وَدَعْتُهَا أُنْثَى. She said, O my Lord, I have given birth to a female. And she said, how will this gentle gender be able to serve your house? And to this Allah replied, the boy that you had prayed for, he cannot compete with this girl, for tomorrow this girl will become the most excellent and high-ranking woman of all the women of her time, and also she will go on to become the mother of Sayyidina Isa. So she then decided to name her Maryam, which means a devout server or worshipper of Allah. So وَإِنِّي سَمَّيْتُهَا Maryam, I have named her Maryam. وَإِنِّي أُعِيذُهَا بِكَ وَذُرِّيَّتَهَا مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ, and I have placed her and her offspring in your protection from the evil of Shaitan. So the Prophet said that when a child is born, the devil comes and pokes that child's forehead, except Sayyidah Maryam and Sayyidina Isa. Why? This is because Sayyidah Maryam's mother, she made a dua to Allah to protect her daughter and her children from Shaitan. So therefore Allah protected them both. وتقبلها ربها بقبول حسن وأنبتها نباتا حسنا. Therefore Allah accepted her as in the female child and caused her to grow up in a good way. Thereafter Allah goes on to talk about her place of worship in Masjid al-Aqsa. So she stayed within one specific room in the masjid, and this is for where she stayed and used for her worship. Sayyidina Zakaria, he was appointed by Allah to be Sayyidah Maryam's caretaker, as in her guardian. So وَكَفَّلَهَا Zakaria, Allah appointed Zakaria. كلما دخل عندها زكريا المحراب وجد عندها رزقا. So every time Hazrat Zakaria visited her in her place of worship, he found provisions of food and drink. So whenever he would go to inquire about Sayyidah Maryam, he'd always find fresh fruits in the room. So meaning he would find fruits of summer in the winter and fruits of winter in the summer. And these were actually the fruits of paradise. قال يا مريم إني لك هذا. He said, "O Maryam, from where did this come to you?" قالت هو من عند الله. She said, "This came from Allah." And this is because these fruits, they weren't available to buy in the market. So Sayyidina Zakaria asked in amazement, from where did they come from? And lastly, I'd like to just finish on a point which is something which the Prophet, peace be upon him, said regarding the excellence of this specific surah. So the Prophet said, "Recite the Quran, for it will intercede on the day of judgment for those who recite it. Recite Surah Baqarah and Surah Ali Imran, which are the chapters of radiance and reward. For they will come on the day of judgment as clouds, or they will come as flocks of birds, and they will argue for the intercession for those who recite these two specific surahs. And also they won't allow the angels of hell to come anywhere near them." Allah allow us to benefit from the Quran and these specific surahs. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.